Hey, everybody, this is Perch. One of the things I've heard from some of the people I've interviewed, but also in live streams and chats, is this idea that comics need to be new reader friendly. And in theory, every comic could be somebody's first comic. And so it's important to, make it possible for somebody to step into comics, maybe who hasn't read them or doesn't really know what's going on there, and make it so that, you can pull in that audience. And I think that's good advice. I do think audiences to comics are coming in all the time. I especially love the idea that people want to get new people to buy comics. That's a good thing. Let's say there's not nearly enough focus on getting people to actually buy comics on a regular basis. So I'm big plus one on that. But I feel like the execution for make every comic accessible is often very poor. People will do it with really clunky recap pages. And I think this is an area where people forget what it was like to be a new comic reader. So if you can remember it, think about the very first comic you read and think about when you're coming on new to a title. I'd like to kind of understand the scenario where you, somebody who has never read comics before, walks into a comic shop, picks up a copy of, I don't know, Captain Marvel number 23 and says, I'm going to start here. And it's part three of a four-part story. But no worries, the helpful writer and editor have produced a recap page on the first page to kind of let you know what's going on. I don't think that's a real life scenario, what I just described. I don't think anybody is actually doing it. I think that's it's the equivalent of a straw man in an argument. It's the idea that somebody would walk into a comic store, pick up just a random comic, and then we're going to put a recap page in there in order to help tell them what's going on. Again, that's not customer behavior. There's been lots of people who've come into my shop who look at comics on the shelf and go, this says on the cover 2 of 6. Do you have number 1? And sometimes I'm like, no, actually number 1 is sold out. I don't even have back issues of number 1. They're like, oh, and they'll put the comic back and not pick up issue 2. That is common behavior. Common behavior is also like, hey, I went to watch this movie. I remember when Black Panther came out, people would come in like, I would like some Black Panther comics. At the time, they had just started Black Panther Goes to Space, which was a very strange choice when you're trying to cross-promote that movie, but there you go. But a lot of people were going and picking up the very limited amount of trades that were available. And then soon those were gone, and we're trying to point people to kind of various other Black Panther issues. But they were pushing, at the time, Marvel was pushing these recap pages in Space Black Panther, and I don't know who those are for. I don't think anyone who's new to the comic is getting any information off those recap pages. And if you're buying the comic regularly, what do you need that recap page for then? So who exactly is that for? Is it for people who forget what was on in the comic a month earlier? Okay, that could be reasonable. But it's a whole page of real estate designed to, in theory, help catch a new reader up to speed. Except no new reader would ever consume comics that way. No one would ever come in and actually do it like that. And so it leaves me with, I do think there's a definite need to provide jumping on points to new readers, but I don't think anybody's doing that properly. I think one option is you just make sure you have stuff in print. You've heard Joe and I talk about how they don't have stuff in print on a regular basis, and that's maddening, insane, and stupid. Another way would be just provide very, very cheap digests of comics designed to start people off. They're sort of doing that with this new Marvel Masterworks collection, but they're taking the slowest possible rollout that they can. Again, you look at something like, God, manga's just shoving new books out every week into the U.S. market. You're telling me that Marvel can't just start the same? I mean, this is a rare case where I'm saying Marvel needs to put more things out in the shops every month. Marvel should be minimum putting out like 6 to 8 digest style $10, get started kind of trades now. Like they should be doing that right now. The audience is there, the market is there, and frankly, that's the best hope they have to growing that coveted, new audience, that new market. But they don't do that. And instead, they go back to the floppies. And you've heard me talk and slash complain about this plenty. It feels like the stated goal is in no way aligned to the desired outcome. In this case, the stated goal is, hey, we need to provide a friendly jumping on point for new readers to come into comics and know where to begin and get hooked. And yet, we're going to do that in the context of a $4.99 comic that has a recap page. Like, I don't know what you're doing in that case. You remember the Avengers? They were running that storyline. It was not too long after Endgame, and they did it in Free Comic Book Day that year, where it's like, hey, the Avengers are going to go to space. Like, okay, the Avengers are more or less space. The team has a Blade the Vampire on it. Thor is, for some reason, a brood. Captain America is dressed up like a Starjammer. Like, none of these characters remotely resemble anything that people just went to the movie theater, $2 billion plus dollars. That to me is the less new reader friendly thing. That to me is the problem. Not let's throw a recap page in there and that will solve everything. That to me is completely ass backward thinking. I think the other kind of complete miss people have is that when take stock of the market, look at what's going on. When you have basically more than 100 books a week, and you do in terms of the big two and all the indies, you have somewhere around 110 to 125 books a week coming out into shops. There needs to be more. I don't know the right word for this. Basically, capturing of customers from other people. If you're an indie comic publisher, the smartest thing you could do is basically point to something the big two are doing that has way more exposure as you, and say, hey, did you like I'm amazed nobody did. Did you like the Avengers? Did you like Endgame? Hey, come read this thing from Valiant. We've got a storyline that will be way better than what you just saw in Endgame, or over there they've got the Avengers in space with a Star Brand baby, but we've got something that actually will remind you of the movie you just went and saw and that made all that money. That's like be a little merciless. Some of these new publishers, these indie publishers, like that's how you pull in a new reader. Go and cannibalize their sales. Go and basically take over their message. But overall, it feels like the message of, hey, we want to be new reader friendly. Hey, we want a good jumping on point. It feels like a good idea that is executed just terribly on a consistent basis. And I maybe it's a problem with overthinking it. Maybe it's a lot of things. But I can just tell you from the standpoint of the shop, what's going to help? Well, if you've got a storyline that's going on, like a part 1 of 6, put that right on the cover. Part 1 of 6. Put out in your solicitations, jumping on point for new readers, and mean it. Just skip the recap page, or if you're going to do it, don't and don't be like Champions and I think Squirrel Girl were doing it, where they're trying to make it look like a Twitter feed, except it's printed in a book. Like that's okay. So all that's going to do is piss off the people who are not super Twitter fans, and it's going to confuse and piss off the people who are on Twitter because it looks like a very pale parody. It's just dumb. Getting new readers is very important. Absolutely. Making things accessible so they can quickly find the comic. Absolutely. But I'm willing to bet. And then here's my question to you in the comments below. Again, think about how you first came into comics. What did you need in order to get going? What did you look for? What did you see? And did the publisher have to hold your hand, or did you figure it out? And if you did, how'd you figure it out? Very, very few people I've ever met started a comic with an issue number 1 of anything. They typically came on mid-run because something attracted them. They liked it. They kept buying. That's the common story. I'm curious if it's yours. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.